John, in 2014, entered in the MLA Farmer Challenge, which led to a number of challenges and changes in his farm business, which he farms with his wife Annie in Bothwell in Tasmania. They turn off about 8,000 prime lambs per annum. They have 150 hectares also of irrigated poppies and about 400 hectares of irrigated ryegrass. What he's going to do in this presentation is walk you through that experience of making change in his farm business, and one of the key things he's learnt in that is sometimes you need outside help. Sometimes you need someone to give you a little bit of guidance, and you might make direct reference to his coach that he had during the MLA Farmer Challenge. And I think that was one of the pieces of sentiment that David Parkham was giving us last night, you know, about mentoring and having a critical friend, bringing your mate along for the ride. And John was fortunate enough to be put in an opportunity to be mentored and developed, and we'll get to hear about his journey and the impacts it's had on his business. So John Ramsay, thank you.
Okay, so Annie and I run a business called Ramsay Agriculture. Has two properties. Ratho's our main property in Bothwell. It's about an hour north of Hobart, about elevation of 350 metres, so it gets quite cold in the winter. And in a place at the northeast of Tassie called Tarlee, about 3 hours away, and that runs 4,500 composite ewes, and that's just the breeding block pretty much. During the challenge, we just focused on our main farm, Ratho, for improvement. It's about 1,000 hectares of productive country, about 300 hectares of unarable country, about 500 hectares of irrigation. So in terms of our farm, a bit over 50% is irrigated, which makes our farm a bit different to most other farms. This year growing 150 hectares of poppies, 5,000 ewes, and we'll trade cattle in the spring if there's a trade there and if the feed's there. And we finished about 8,000 lambs last year and hope to do a few more this year. So why the MLA Challenge? Well, we had a bit of a problem in our business. We grow poppies. They're very lucrative if you grow them well. And in about 2001, we put our first irrigator in. We had fresh ground, put the pivot in, put the poppies in, grow a good crop, make money, do it again. Easy. Between the poppy crops, you can only grow poppies 1 in 3. We grow winter wheat, finish lambs, shut them up, take the cereal crop off, put barley in the next year, grow good crops, do it all again. Worked well. Unfortunately, we're probably mining our soil structure, so it worked well because we had good soil structure after probably 50 years of pasture. But also we had probably some dry years in the time we were doing it. And the whole system came crashing down in about 2009 when the rains returned, wet winters returned to the area, and our poppy yields plummeted. So we kept on doing what we were doing for 2 years, and we realised, Jesus, this isn't working. We're in a pretty unhappy place. We weren't making any money. And the whole valley of Bothwell was probably in a similar situation. And so we got a grant through Caring for Our Country, got some experts in, and they came in and said, looked at what we're doing, looked at our soils. We're farming on probably 10 or 12 inches of topsoil. Under that's an impermeable sodic soil. So we haven't got a lot of soil to deal with. And the advisor said, look, the best thing for your soil is ryegrass. Poppies, then 2 years of ryegrass and back to your poppies again. Ryegrass, shallow rooted but very vigorous root system, actually aggregates soil particles, but also grows a heap of ton of dry matter on top. That's putting carbon in underneath, and that's going to help your soil structure. So we did what they said, and we changed our rotation to poppies and ryegrass. It was a big change, and we did it terribly. Put this ryegrass in, tried to run merino sheep on it, not enough, and again, made no money. We're like, oh, God, what are we going to do now? Saw the MLA Challenge advertised, and we thought, geez, that's going to be pretty handy. It's right up our alley of what we need to do. So applied, and luckily we got in. So here's a photo of springtime, probably not last spring, but the 3 springs before. Ryegrass, it's Italian, high performance, highly fertile pastures, grows fast in the spring particularly, and you just can't keep on top. And so these are some weaned lambs on ryegrass up over their shoulders. Here's another photo of our country. It's a linear irrigator. Ryegrass there, all falling over, undergrazed. And as you can see, we're quite flat where we're doing our irrigation. So the challenge gave us various tools and resources, and one of the key tools was giving us a mentor. And my mentor is John Keirlaw. He's here today. John, probably you all know or heard of him, but he runs Cashmore Park, a composite stud in Portland. He's had a wealth of experience in crossbred sheep and farming, been involved in benchmarking, and he gave us some key messages. So John came down to visit the farm right at the start of the challenge. We sat down together and we devised a strategy. John and I had a pretty frank discussion about what we should be doing. I had a paradigm that we had irrigation, we had high performance pastures, we should be finishing stock. That's what, I thought that was the most profitable thing to do. And he said, well, it's not really about finishing or breeding or whatever, it's about turning that grass into meat. And with your feed demand, you've got short winters, big springs. He thought that probably the most profitable way would be to have a breeding system. We talked a lot about prices, and he said, well, I thought that finishing would have a better price per kilo, and he said, well, go and research it. So I went and off and did the research, and it showed that actually a store lamb price per kilo is going to give us similar, if not better, than a finished lamb in Tasmania. We thought, okay, well, we're heading off in a breeding system. It's going to be just as profitable. 5,000 ewes, breeding store lambs, sell them off their mum, whatever, and at least that'll eat the spring flush. We both did agree though that we weren't utilising that resource of that ryegrass, and we needed to do it better. So the other problem I had was, well, we've got no shelter. We've got knocked all the trees down for the pivots. We can't lamb in this country. And he said, oh, look, that's great about having fresh eyes. He looked at our farm, he said, oh, there's plenty of places in Western Victoria, probably all around all the world that are lambing country like this. You're not Robinson Crusoe. You just need to have the right type of sheep. And he said that some key points are that the time of lambing is important, so that's weather, but also, probably more importantly, feed on offer. So you've got to have your 1,500 kilos of dry matter. So spring's got to be starting to get away when you're starting to lamb, and we were probably trying to lamb too early, still in August, when now we're lambing mid-September. Feed on offer can also offer shelter for the lamb, so it can actually give a little bit of shelter, break the wind a bit, but also offers energy for the ewes, as most people probably in the room know. But what I didn't realise is that to get better survival rates, you need a bigger lamb. To get a bigger lamb, you need a bigger ewe. Crossbred ewes are much bigger than a fine wool merino, which we're trying to do it with. So, but also you can choose your genetics to make sure you do get a bigger lamb, which I didn't know much about that either. So we were heading off with crossbred sheep and selecting rams with good birth weights. Here's a photo of our country, used lambing, not bad food, and the irrigator is the only bit of shelter for the poor little lambs. The other tool that we used a lot was the feed demand calculator, a tool developed by the MLA and CSIRO. A fantastic tool, and I would highly recommend anyone who's making changes in their business like we do to get on and have a look. Actually, everyone should get on and have a look anyway. Before I used this tool, I had no idea about pasture growth rates. I don't know how many people in the room do, but it's something that we should all really know, what your pasture growth rates are doing in the winter, what they're doing in the spring. I had no idea. Got on, used this tool, and John and I used this tool really to plan the year. So set our lambing dates, how many ewes we're going to winter, how many cattle we could purchase, and how many lambs we're going to finish, and when we had to finish them by. Just a quick overview of the tool. You put all your different land classes in. So we've got irrigated summer here, irrigated in the autumn, hill country, lucerne, fodder rape, pasture dryland, but that's improved, so that's improved pastures. And it'll come up automatically with your indicative growth rates for a region near you. So we've got a station, 20 minutes away. Everyone in the room would have a station not too far away. That gives you a rough guide. We ended up having to change ours because our high performance ryegrass is more like a dairy pasture, so we actually started taking dairy growth rates and plugging it in this tool. So you put your land classes in, and it comes up with this pretty graph. You put your stock in, and it comes up with this pretty graph. Starting from September, it's a pretty similar graph to most of southern Australia. Big spring flush, short in the winter. You know, it's nothing too different. We all probably have similar problems. In our situation, I reckon we have bigger springs just because of those Italian ryegrasses. They're growing sort of 80, 90 kilograms of dry matter a hectare a day, which is quite hard to keep control of. But yeah, it's a great tool, and I reckon if we had have used it when I first made that change, we would have made our changes a lot better. So during the challenge, we made a lot of changes. We changed from merinos to crossbreds. We changed up our ewe numbers from about 1,200 to 5,000. Introduced trading cattle. Decreased the cropping area from 600 down to 200. Increased our lambing percentage, which I'll talk more about. Increased our lamb turn-off. Increased our labour efficiency. But most importantly, while we're doing this, we want to increase our return on assets to give us a more viable future. So this is a bit of a complicated graph showing how we changed our ewe numbers. So in 2011, had about the green lines merinos joined to merinos, blue lines total. These are merinos joined to white Suffolk. So we had 1,000 merino ewes joined to merinos, 200 merino ewes joined to white Suffolks. But that's because we were cropping most of the farm. 2012, started that ryegrass change, brought in merinos joined to terminals, got total ewe numbers up to nearly 3,000. Didn't work. So 2013 brought in the crossbreds. It worked, so all crossbreds out with the merinos. A lambing percentage. So in 2012, prior to the challenge, we were trying to lamb. This is on our cropping, our exposed ground. These figures, trying to lamb merinos to white Suffolks, and scanned about 130%, so a pretty fair scanning rate. But only lambed at 66. Absolute disaster. You know, they got foot rot, they weren't good lambs, a lot of them died, it was just, yeah, it was not good. 2013, first year of the crossbreds, went on the exposed country. They scanned at 130% as well, so actually a very bad scanning percentage. It was pretty dry autumn that year, I was still learning, and make all excuses I want, but it was not a great scanning percentage, but similar to the merinos the year before, but they lambed at 100%, so instantly, we've picked up 34% lambs by making that change. And then through the challenge and after the challenge, instigating all those procedures and feed on offer targets and body condition targets, we scanned 175% and lambed 136 last spring. So, we're really happy with that. And it just shows that the changes that we made. We want to get better at that. If you're scanning 175, you should be landing more than 136. So this year we're going to continue to improve, continue to do better, and we're working with a few people to try and make that better. I was asked at one of these talks, what did they think the gross margin between merinos and crossbreds were, and I didn't actually know. I didn't do it. To me, it was a no-brainer when you see those lambing percentage figures. However, I sat down and worked out, what the break-even needed to be between merinos and crossbreds, and a lot of benchmarking data and a lot of people in the room will say that merinos joined to a terminal size are the most profitable ewe flock, and I'd agree. No doubt about it. You've got the wool and you've got your meat. But it's about horses for courses. It's about what your country is suited to. Our country was merino country, but you put irrigation on it, I believe it's turned into crossbred country. But about the break-even is you need about 30% more lambs. This is based on last 10 years historical data on wool and lamb price. About 30% more lambs in a crossbred flock to be as similar as a merino flock. And on those last figures showing, 60% more lambs. So we're definitely more profitable. At about 130% lambing, we're about $700 per hectare gross margin, and that's fully costed. That's labour, put a lot of nitrogen on, we put a lot of irrigation on, so it's quite a high cost system. Compared to our cereals, it's not as good, but we're doing this to make our poppies better, which in the end hopefully will make the whole farm more profitable. So another photo, when I see a photo like that, it's totally undergrazed, I need to do that better. But irrigation means crossbreds. Lamb sales. So when John and I sat down and devised a strategy, I thought that we'd be breeding 5,000 lambs, 130% lambing, that's 5,000 ewes, that's 8,000 lambs. I can't finish that many. We'll have to sell them to stores. Well, through the challenge, we'd actually sold 7,500 lambs by June, whereas traditionally we were selling 5,000 all through the year, mainly up to September, capturing that winter market. And some of the reasons for this is, I think one of the key reasons is second cross lambs will finish about 30% quicker genetically, so that's made a massive improvement to our lamb turnoff. But also the challenge, setting KPIs, setting targets, measuring and managing meant we could actually focus on what we were doing. And before we had no idea what our weight gains were. We probably had lots of lambs not doing anything, but now we're measuring our weight gains. We weren't doing any pasture testing, and we were pasture testing, pastures that we didn't know. So if they weren't quite up to ME or we had a calcium deficit or something like that, we can correct that to maximise our weight gains. And also, we've used a lot more grain in self-feedness to try and help with that energy deficit the ryegrass has in the summer months. Also, we've been worm testing every month, which previous to that we hardly drenched our prime lambs. We didn't think they needed to, but now we worm test and drench them much more regularly. So it's a much more focused approach, and the challenge gave us the rigour and the competition to make us want to do that. In our benchmarking, it always shows we're a really high-cost business, and so through the challenge I wanted to focus on one of our biggest costs, the biggest cost, which is labour. So we had a labour efficiency KPI, and at the start of the challenge it was around about 7,000 DEC per full-time equivalent, and at the end of the challenge we got up to 9,000. And that was quite simple to do. We did it purely through just simplifying what we're doing. So simple systems. So we had 3 types of ewe prior to the challenge. After the challenge we only had 1. It just made it simpler and made it more labour efficiency. We had 1 lambing date as opposed to 3 lambing dates. Crossbreds are an easier care sheep, so that helped. A lot less drenching. They seem to carry a lot better condition on their back through the autumn, winter, so a lot less feeding. There have been a few extra labour issues with our crossbreds. They keep getting cast on their back, so that's taking a bit of time over lambing. And twin lamb disease is such a high performance vehicle that they seem to get more twin lamb disease issues. We're trying to rectify that at the moment. And also, they've been really hard on our on fences and yards, so we've put a lot of labour into trying to fix up our fences and yards. And that's probably the next stage. We've just got to get better laneways, better fences. We've just bought an auto drafter and a new set of sheep yards to keep on working on that labour efficiency KPI. But again, while we're doing all this, is to increase our poppy gross income. Last year we already saw some improvement. It wasn't up here where we've got estimated, but it was definitely an improvement, and you could see the soil structure was much better coming out of the ryegrass phase. It's a photo of my son Henry and a crop of poppies, just to give you a shot of what they look like. Genetics. So having John Keeler, a ram breeder, as my mentor, and my sister also works in sheep genetics, there's no way I could escape genetics through the challenge. So previous to the challenge, we used to buy white Suffolk rams and just get our agent to go and buy them for $700. That's what I said to him. Make sure they've got small shoals so they can lamb easy. It's very basic. Through the challenge, through research, we went and said, what are important traits? What are important traits? And we worked on, we obviously wanted a big lamb, as we talked about, but we wanted to have really growthy lamb. So post-weaning weight and birth weight were 2 traits that we selected. Then we went and researched studs that were good, were leading in those traits, and then we went and bought rams within those studs that were leading. And again, while we're doing all this to increase our return on assets, to give us options in the future. Now that's estimated. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. The challenge had many other benefits. So John was great, the mentor was great at working on the on-farm stuff and changing all the things we talked about so far. However, Sam Newson, who's a farm advisor, was a judge of the challenge, and he came down to our farm twice through the year to judge, but also being advisor, he couldn't help but giving his 2 bob's worth, which was fantastic. And he talked about a few different things, and he talked about wealth creation, and in farms that he's seen, wealth creation is not just about the production side of things, but you've got to manage your assets well. You've got to know when to buy a farm, know when to sell a farm, know when to develop your farm. That's where you can make a lot of wealth. Annie, my wife, is a full-time nurse. She manages a unit in Hobart, and he talked about that, and it's quite good because we very rarely talked about Annie's role as a farm in the business, but he talked about that being important, and it worked for us, but we just need to simplify the farm even more to make it work even better. He talked about my role in the business, employing 5 people. I sort of need to be like the coach, like David Park, and float around the top and just make sure everyone was doing the right thing. And we talked about what he saw as top 20% producers, and it'd be interesting to listen to the presentation later by Paul, what he sees. But I think David Parkin touched on it yesterday that good coaches, good managers manage their team. Bring people in when they need to. They've got good cattle on the paddock, and they get good results. Sister Sam came down and saw us making all this hay and shook his head. So Ramsay Ag, we've had many years of change. Started when I came back from Orange Ag College in 2001. My father luckily was open and supportive to most of the changes. In 2001 we purchased that home place, and debt and succession, there's 5 kids in our family, meant that status quo wasn't going to be okay. So we set about developing it. Everyone else in the Clyde Valley was doing poppies and pivots, so we jumped on board as well. We've added a pivot every 3 years to now get to 520 hectares of irrigation. And we've gone from 9,000 DC to 16,000 DC. 5? Ooh. So we've benchmarked the whole way through. Our turnover's quadrupled, and so's our net worth. Succession's planned with my parents. Annie and I are juggling busy lives. We've just employed an au pair for the last year. That's helped a lot, but we're finding ways to make things easier. Okay, how do you judge successful change? Well, it's the triple bottom line everyone talks about. You've got to make sure people are happy, you're making good profit, and the environment's taken care of. We could have done it better by changing sooner. We chased that continual cropping 2 years too long, and when we did make that big change into ryegrass, we should have done it with a lot more support around us. The rapid growth we've been through has been stressful but necessary, and we believe it's going to make us more viable into the future. So change, my view. Assess what you're doing through benchmarking and goal setting. You've got to know where you're at before you go and change anything, and you may not need to change anything. Change the easy things first that give you the biggest bang for your buck. You might be a manager that's not good at planning, or you might be a manager that's not good at implementing. They're the things you've got to work on more importantly than some of the twig issues that we probably get caught up in sometimes. Analyse every change option, because there's hundreds of them, and focus on the core issues. Analyse based on risk, people and profit, and find a way. Don't make excuses. I know I'm terrible at that, going, it's too hard, but sometimes you just got to find a way to make it happen, and then just make it happen. How do you remove risks? So you put those support systems around you that we've talked about. The challenge had 6 farmers who made amazing changes within a year. You wouldn't think some of the changes could be possible. Through research, tools from the MLA, farm advisors and mentors. Managing the change, adaptive management is important. Measure, manage and review. You've got to have capital available. I talked to a few people about change, and they said that a lot of people have got great ideas and they can't implement it totally because they run out of money. So you've got to make sure you've got the money in the bank, or the bank on side with what you're doing. And then you've also got to have the team on side, although wide-handed. So you've got to have your business partners, your wife, your father, your key staff members happy to go along with it as well. So in summary, assess what you're doing. Big changes can happen. Put the support around you, and you can change things for the better. Thanks.
We have a moment for a couple of questions. If you could just hold the question until you get the microphone, because we are recording and we'd like to record the whole session.
Jason, down the middle.
Righto.
Yeah, good talk. Does a merino sheep eat more than a crossbred sheep? And other way around, crossbred eat more than merino. How many people do you have working for you?
I've got about 5 people working for us. And yeah, a crossbred eats more. And it's interesting, when I did the research, so we're short in the winter, big springs. The crossbred goes up, its DSC goes up 230% in a spring, compared to a merino that only goes up 180, I think, depending on your lambing percentage. But that's what we want. We want that grass converted, so we want that DC increased. It's probably not so much about the DC of the sheep, it's almost about the DC increase and converting that grass into meat. Does that answer that?
Alan Sheridan. I noticed in two pictures there where you showed your store lambs and then a picture of using lambs, that they seem to have an enormous amount of feed on offer. Is this a problem that you have, or is that part of your normal feeding pattern to have that amount of feed on offer for your sheep?
Look, it is normal, but it's not good. Last spring it wasn't because it was a bad spring. But and interesting, last spring our weaning weights were much better than the previous 2 springs when they had probably 3.5 tonne of feed on offer. So no, it's not good. I've just been in New Zealand last week, and I need to learn more about how to control grass in the spring. We don't see much profit in haymaking, but it seems to be maybe only option or getting that trade cattle in. But sometimes that spring trade isn't a profitable one. So, always looking at options. We realise that's definitely too much feed on offer. Yep.
You were talking about increasing your lambing percentage from scanning.
Can't see what it looks like.
Sorry, I'm up here.
Yeah, sorry.
And just wondering what you were putting in place to help with increasing that percentage.
So triplets, it's a bit disappointing. Went to New Zealand, thought I'd learn about triplet management and no one had an answer, so no silver bullets there, but we've got to learn how to do the triplets better. Had big hypocalcemia issues last year, so we're using licks and to try and get the calcium levels up in the ewe. So hopefully that'll help. So they're probably the 2 main things, and we pushed our lambing date back 2 weeks again to try and increase the FOO. So we're lambing mid-September to make sure the feed on offer is right for when we're lambing.
We might make this the last one.
Yeah, John, Tim Govins, I just wanted to know about how you found your mentor, and how do you go through the selection process of getting a mentor that's really going to be critical and pour the acid on? Well,
it's interesting, good question, because I think all mentors, apart from one other, were chosen by MLA. And I actually had this man here chosen as my mentor, but he couldn't get to Sydney when on the start. So I said, I'd really like the guy to get there in the start. So I said I've got a few other hats in the ring, and John, I knew him, and so we ended up going with John. Very key decision, because if they're going to shape your business, you want to make sure they're shaping it in the right way. I think that's a big issue. It's almost you pull expertise from wherever you can. So I think it's great that we had John as a mentor. He's great on sheep and pasture, but then it's also great we had Sam as a farm advisor, and I think a myriad of people helping your business, as long as they're the right people, is really important. So to answer the question, how do you find a mentor? If you can't find one, buy one, I suppose.
If we could give him a round of applause, please.